What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sports Card Intel, a sports card interview show. Tonight's guest, we are bringing on Dustin from the Sports Card Dad on YouTube, on Twitter, all those types of places. Dustin, thank you for coming on tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, I've been watching your content kind of from afar. I reached out to you, this morning, and you came on. I'm actually really excited that you were able to come on tonight. So, how's everything going for you?
It's going good. Yeah, always staying busy. I mean, I put out pretty much daily content, and then, with family and everything else, we're always busy around here, but that's a good thing. I'd rather be busy than not. So all
Right.
good.
Yeah. That's how I feel as well. So, I mean, for you, like, you're a content person. I'm not sure if that's how you refer to yourself, but I feel like I definitely refer to myself as a content person. So, like, within this sports card world, like, how would you say that you describe yourself?
Um, I don't know. I think I'm probably just a hobbyist like everybody else. I just happen to have a YouTube channel, whereas maybe some might have a podcast or they might do a blog, or maybe they're just private and do it on their own. So I guess I would classify myself as just a hobbyist, but I'm also, honestly, I'm a viewer of a lot of other hobby content as well. So, I know there's some content creators that just don't watch a whole lot. Maybe they don't have time. But for me, I really enjoy taking it in. So I watch you guys, I watch a lot of stuff. So I feel like kind of multifaceted. I make content, I take in a lot, and then I'm buying and selling cards, and I'm a hobbyist too.
Yeah, I mean, you're somebody who creates a lot of like YouTube videos, so I'm sure that takes up a lot of your time. I mean, I definitely feel probably same. I'm a hobbyist. I think that's a great title to have there. So, like, when you were first getting back into sports cards, or maybe, I think for my story, I was into it and then I wasn't into it and then I got back into it. So, like, for you, what was the first card or moment that you either, you could just talk about the first time, and then if you took a break and got back into it, like, what were the first kind of moments for you that you remember getting back into sports cards where you really kind of sparked the desire to continue collecting?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, I collected as a kid, so it was really kind of like the last big boom. It was late 80s, early 90s. That was just a great time in the hobby. And that was like 8 to 13 years of age for me, roughly. And then in 2006, I don't talk about this a lot, but I briefly got back in when Reggie Bush and Drew Brees went to the
Hmm.
Saints. I'm a huge New Orleans Saints fan. And just out of curiosity, I went and I looked at cards. I did pick up, and I didn't dive into I didn't dive back into it. I strictly just looked at, what cards does Reggie Bush have? And I wanted to grab a few of those, and I did. And I still have those. So I did briefly get back in and grab some Reggie Bush stuff in 2006, 2007, but then nothing again until 2018. And it was again kind of, it was collectibles as a whole. So, when I was a kid, I collected comic books and I played video games and I collected cards. So now I've got graded video games, graded comic books, graded cards. I've got raw stuff too, obviously, but
Hmm.
I got back into like all the stuff. I've got He-Man figures that are still in the box. I've got starting lineups that are graded. So I think I'm kind of more of like a nostalgia in my like bio thing on Instagram. I think I have like nostalgia nerd or something, but for me, it's like all the 80s and 90s stuff. I just think it's awesome. And then the collectibles that are associated with those, I'll take a look at kind of any of those things. And then cards is just a natural extension of kind of what I was doing as a kid. But what's been amazing though is just how cards have evolved, especially with grading since 1990, when I was doing it as a kid. There was just no options, as far as grading goes, or, there was, kind of the main sets. And then you also didn't have anywhere to sell your cards, so it was like you pull a great card out of a pack, then you just hand it back to the dealer and he gives you 10 more packs. Like that
Right.
was
Right.
your hobby experience as a kid. Now it's vastly different, as like now it's like, pick your selling platform. Do you want to put it in a vault? Do you want to like there's a million different things. So it's very different.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the main things that I think is different. Like you were saying, is so different from, even like I growing up in the 90s and kind of being a little bit of a collector back then. I was younger in the 90s, I suppose. But like going to a hobby shop or going to like a flea market and like getting cards, and, then they would just like sit kind of, in my room as a kid. I didn't really know exactly what to do with them. I wasn't buying and selling them really back then. But like the changes I think within the industry have come, and there are tons of different things. And I think one of the things that has you know been a huge change is like the ease of kind of getting into anything you can really think of. And I think one of the things, we're going to get into a topic that maybe is a little bit heavier for some people, maybe for yourself as well, but like, you put out a phenomenal video at the beginning of January, and then you put out another video, kind of like an update, and then you did a mini interview with Sports Collectors Daily about sort of like the addiction within cards. So I'm interested kind of to hear your story about that, and like if there's anything you can say for maybe somebody that is sort of maybe experiencing some of the same things. Like I don't want to say like tips and tricks or whatever, but it's like I think for somebody like you were able to sort of maybe catch it a little bit early, where some people might not be as lucky. But like, so I'm interested. So for you, like the addiction, is it something where, how did you sort of catch it? I'm just interested to hear kind of a little bit of the backstory behind that.
Yeah, I had been buying cards really, I would say on a weekly or biweekly basis, really, I mean, straight for about 3 years, probably, maybe even a little bit longer than that. And it got to a point where it was just very habitual. And I mentioned in the article, I mean, it would be like paydays on Friday. And by like Tuesday, Wednesday, I've already got like bids out on stuff. Like the money is already spent,
Mm.
and, it got to a point where I guess the good news, or like the good part of it, is I didn't run up a bunch of credit card debt. It was disposable income, but I've got 4 kids, I've got a wife, I've got a lot of responsibilities. And anytime that's the case, like if you spend $1 on a card, that's $1 that could have gone to a college fund. It could have gone into, the retirement
Mm.
account or whatever. So, there's a lot of moving parts, and even if you don't have any kids, I mean, it's really no different. It's, you could have put that money into real estate. You could have put that money against something else or whatever. And so what had happened where I started to feel uncomfortable is I was just kind of impulse buying. And then my wife and I had conversations, and I was kind of more like, hey, I'm good. Like I've got this stuff paid for. We had a couple of bills that had come up, and I actually didn't have the money for it. And so I had to kind of like restructure a couple of things now I had the money in savings to be able to pay for those things, but I shouldn't have had to pull the money from savings. I should have already had the money, like I should have already had it. And so it kind of evolved to where we had these conversations throughout last year, and kind of just like, no big deal, no big deal, we're good. Then kind of every year annually, like December timeframe, we take a look at our budget, we take a look at like what's coming in, what's going out. And I just realized we looked at like the amount of money that went to collectibles, and it was higher than that I wasn't keeping good enough track of it. So it was like, wow, that's actually a lot more than I had really anticipated. And it was just kind of like going through the motions, and again, you're just having fun, and you just, and I guess, I probably look at it as like, well, it's not like I'm sports betting to where I make a bet and that money's gone. It's like, no, I've got this card and I can sell the card if needed. So there is that aspect of it. I mean, there's worse things to spend money on, obviously. But, I feel like over my life, I've had somewhat of an addictive personality. I smoked cigarettes in my 20s and stuff. And so, I kind of like looked at it from the same standpoint of, is this a habitual thing that I'm not really controlling properly? And then could it have negative effects? Yeah. I mean, it can have negative effects if I don't catch it, if I don't kind of make some changes. And so that was the part where, and I think that it was relatable to people because it's kind of that fringe. I'm like on the fringe. When you talk about addiction, you're thinking like drugs and alcohol and things like that. But, and then in cards, you're thinking breaks. Oh, okay. Well, maybe you're running up credit cards and buying into breaks and stuff. That's bad. But I think it can also be, even if you're just buying singles or buying boxes, sealed boxes, and maybe you're even getting great deals on those things, and you're going to hold them for 10 years, and you're getting, you feel like you're getting deals, but that's still money that's going out the door. And if you're not controlling yourself, then, I think that's where I caught myself and made those videos, and it did catch on. I think there was, at first it was embarrassing, really. I talked to my wife about it, and she was like, are you sure that you want to talk about that? I mean, she wasn't like, you should make this video. She was like, I fully support you, but I also understand if you wouldn't want to do it. And even today, after I've gotten I've gotten pushback of, you just need to, you're spending your wife's allowance or whatever, people don't know what they're talking about, but they have opinions, and that's fine. But I'm still glad that I did it. I think it's been a net positive for the, as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on. I mean, I've been watching some of your YouTube content as well, and you're a phenomenal content creator. So like, I like bringing on people who are content
Appreciate it.
creators in the space. And I mean, like I said, I think it's commendable kind of to discuss this type of thing because like, I think with the industry where it's at now, like there's definitely going to be like, I don't know. I mean, I don't need I don't maybe I don't need or I don't mean to sound dramatic, but like the way that like there's one you can call 1-800 gambler if you have like a sports betting addiction or you're addicted to casinos. Like I could see a resource like that, or even just using that resource as like a sports card type of thing. And like because I just think that like nowadays, like getting into breaks, and I mean, even if we're talking gambling, just in general, like sports gambling, it's become legal all over the United States. Breaking is 100% legal everywhere in the United States. So it's like
Yeah.
it's becoming more of like, and with the high stakes, I think that go into some of these like bigger box breaks, like you are basically doing I don't mean to categorize this gambling, but in a way, like you're spending however much on a break, hoping you can get in. And I mean, just for my own, I don't necessarily have a story like yours, but I think one of the things that I definitely ran into when I was first getting back into sports cards and I was discovering breaking was like, it's just you get so like excited when it's your time for like a box break, and you're like, if you're watching somebody that you know about do a box break, or you're watching like a live stream and it's like it's your box, and once they start opening it, it's like you see other spots that are available maybe later on. You're like, well, I'll just I don't know what I'm going to pull from this one. If I pull and get my money back, I'll just buy another one. It's like it can be a very slippery slope. So from your perspective, like and I really I do and I don't like the thought of like regulations, I guess, being brought into sports cards because it sounds kind of ridiculous. But like when you get into the industry a little bit more, like I feel like you start to maybe understand that there might need to be a little bit of that. So like from your perspective, like is that something that you think could come down the road, or is it something where we're still kind of regulating sports gambling a little bit, so it's something that you maybe don't even think we'll really ever have to deal with?
I'm not really a big fan of regulation only because usually it means over-regulation,
Mm,
so and this is a very niche space. So what typically happens is you have regulation that comes in and yes, it cuts out those bad apples, but then it also takes a wide swipe and knocks out good
mm,
folks too. It makes it expensive to do business,
right.
so I do understand when you see these dumb things that happen on, on video. See, it's all on video too. It's not like this is
Right,
behind the
right.
scenes. Like it's all on the internet for us all to see. I think what's going to happen is more likely that companies are going to just get more serious about cracking down on it. That's
Mm,
what I think will happen. If there's ever a threat of regulation to these large companies, especially like a Fanatics, it's going to start Fanatics Live and going to really control inventory. I feel pretty good that they're going to crack down on it and have some sort of guideline in place. I would be shocked if they didn't. I would be shocked if we see a lot of these kind of folks that are dipping cards or whatever. I would be very, very surprised. Or, if they do, then they're fired immediately, kind of like what
right.
happened in this last one. I think it's just going to become more and more of a thing that if you fool around, you'll be out of business. But, I think we have to face too. I mean, if you look at 5 years ago when I got back in, a hobby box for Prism or something was like $200, for like
Right.
Prism football. Now it's like $1,000, so I mean, just the cost of entry is very expensive. As you said, like the stakes are so much higher now. And if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, even just buying a regular, like now it seems like, oh my gosh, a hobby box is $400 or $500. That's a bargain. 5 years ago, it was, $100, $150. These
Right.
lower end, these like mid-tier products are now very expensive. So there probably will be, well, I shouldn't say there probably will be a correction on that pricing because it's just going to boil down to if they sell it or not. I mean, and I don't know. So I guess we'll just have to see. But yeah, there's just so much at stake. This hobby that's was a lot less expensive 5 years ago is now a very expensive hobby to be in. I mean, like
Right. Yeah.
being
Yeah.
a
Right.
sports card collector is now serious business.
Yeah, it's almost like you almost like have to have a business if you want to be a collector nowadays, unfortunately. Like you and it's one thing that I definitely like about cards is that you can buy and sell, and that can kind of be the sustaining force of your buying cards. But at the same time, it's almost like if you're not buying and selling, you can rack up like a hefty bill, especially if you want to get like new rookies, or like even if you want to get like I don't want to call them nice cards because it's like any card to anybody could be a nice card, but it's like if you want to get like a higher end RPA, it's like it's almost unobtainable for the average person looking to get in. Like I think I saw a Slapstock post I think a couple weeks ago. They were comparing a LeBron second year autograph to like I think it was his name is Devon Carter. He's like a player. He's like a rookie for the Spurs, and they were the same price. And I'm looking at this like I don't even know who this guy is, and they're both like $3,000 cards. And it's like $3,000 is not just chump change. Like I'm sure for some people, that are in this industry, maybe it is, but like for somebody who's just in this for kind of just playing around, like it's those cards are maybe unobtainable. And I guess it's if the business side of it, I think is definitely interesting as well. Like do you consider sort of the content and all that sort of stuff like a business from your perspective? Like I know you have sponsors and stuff, but like is it like is it a business? I guess that's kind of maybe the question that I have for you.
Yeah, it's become a business over time. I would say when I first started, of course, I didn't have a sponsor, I think, until about 18 months in. And then it kind of snowballed from there. So it's somewhat turned into a business, a very fun one. I mean, it's kind of like a side business. But I do look at, I guess, and I do wonder, I think with content as a whole, how that grows over time. Sports cards is very niche, but how is that going to change, with what other opportunities, I guess, could arise for content creators? Oh yeah. Thanks, Brendan. I appreciate it. Brendan's always been very supportive. He's awesome. No, I appreciate that. Yeah. I think the content space is, to answer your question, yes, it has become, more of a business, and especially with the growth too, of just more attention on sports cards and channels growing, all that stuff, not just me, but everybody. Right. I think there's just added responsibility, especially during a really strange economic time globally, where, I think there's a responsibility. At least my 2023 is all about hobby sustainability is like my theme on my channel. Not that I haven't had that, going back years, I've preached caution, but especially now, I'm really focused heavily on that piece, is just trying to not just always be, I don't want to be negative or sad about stuff or whatever. I mean, it's a really, really fun hobby, but I want to make sure to sprinkle in some of that financial stuff too.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal message. I mean, I completely agree with the sustainability. I mean, I think there are tons of different ways for people to enjoy the hobby, and I think that's one of the great parts about it. So for you, like you're over 1,000 videos already on YouTube. You started back in March of 2020. What kind of got you into content creation, first of all, and then also like sports card content creation? Because I think for me, I have a little bit of a graphic design background, and then I got into some type of content. Then I got back into cards a little bit. But for you, were you a content creator before sports cards, or did the journey kind of start all at the same time?
It all started, my content journey started at the same time. I'd never done anything like this before. And so I didn't know if I'd be good at it. And at first I was not very good at it at all. I mean, I think like with anything, it just takes reps, and I had no reps. I think Jeff Wilson has like a broadcasting degree or something. Like he's obviously very, sharp in front of the camera. I am not that way. So, what got me into it was more of, I was looking for content and I couldn't find, if I'll give credit to Jeff Wilson going back to 2019, there wasn't a lot of that style of just making a video talking about a hobby topic, and that's what there was definitely videos of like, hey, we're showing cards, collector style videos. I found that stuff. There was breaking videos, so saw that, but I didn't see just like commentary, like, hey, this is what's going on. Not to say there wasn't any of that, because I'm sure there was, but I was kind of hungry for that, especially as I was buying and selling collectibles. And I was like, man, this is such a fun space, but I just couldn't find anything. So I could find it, but it was just limited. I was always yearning for more. I'd watch a video and I'd be like, man, I wish that they would just keep on going. I could watch hours of this. And so then I was like, I should throw my hat in the ring and just try this out. I really started off daily. So I wanted to do, my bread and butter has always been kind of 5-minute to 12-minute videos, maybe 15 minutes, but it's always kind of a hobby topic, more of a conversation starter. I usually sit on the fence on particular topics. So I kind of talk about, here's my opinion on this, but I can also see this side of the story and that side and that side. So I try to kind of, And for some people, that's boring. I mean, for some people, they want you to take a hard stance and to speak with conviction. But the truth is there's usually 5 different sides to a story or different angles you can look at something.
Mm,
So a lot of times I just throw a topic out. I'll make a couple of points that I think, and then I'll throw it out to the audience. Like, what do you guys think? And I've been doing that really for 3 years. And I just have fun doing it. It's kind of my creative outlet. I throw in dumb NES clips and things and, just to have fun. But I enjoy that. My kids think it's funny, like, so there's, I would say that's just kind of like, it's just an extension of my hobby experience, probably like it is for you. You do
yeah.
collectibles, but then you also enjoy doing the content. It's kind of the same.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with basically every single point you made there. I mean, I definitely sit on the fence on a lot of subjects. Like, I think I have opinions on stuff, but I'm also like, but I mean, it could be the other thing. Like, I think it's totally reasonable. Like, and then also the other point you made about like when you're creating content because you were creating content that you were trying to find. That's like 100% actually why I kind of started creating sports card content, because there was a lot of like Sports Collectors Daily, and there was like a lot of like Cardboard Connections where they were connections where they were, this is this set and this is what the configuration looks like and this is what the checklist is, but there wasn't really like, I guess, opinions on the stuff. It was a lot of like
Right.
granular information. And then even Card Ladder was something that didn't exist. So there wasn't even that data really that existed either. So like
Yeah.
getting into content creation, I mean, it was a lot of like, I basically was just learning and then trying to create content basically about what I learned for the most part.
Yeah, it was kind of almost, and not to say there wasn't personalities in the space, because
Right.
there are personalities that have been going back further than 3 years, obviously, but there wasn't as many of them putting out YouTube content or just showing that side of their personality. Maybe it was like, well, YouTube content's supposed to be like this certain way, and we talk
Mm,
about, these sets, and then I feel like in 2019, 20, then it started to be, it just got more creative, I think. You had more people coming in to make content, and everybody was doing it a different way. And some people are copying each other. I'm copying people, they're copying me, and
right.
we're
Right.
trying new things. But that's good, because then you're trying all these different things. Some of it sticks, some of it doesn't. But that's part of the fun too. And people will talk about views and subs and stuff. Views and subs for me it's just a fun challenge. It's not as if
Right.
I'm like, yes, I've got goals and things, but it's fun for me to put something out and see like, oh, this topic did well, this one did horribly, like, and just compare and contrast. That's all part of the game. That's the YouTube game. But that part is also fun.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, a little bit about addiction. Like I like playing Call of Duty sometimes. Actually, a lot. I play a lot of Call of Duty, and like you get into those modes. Sometimes you're like, all right, just one more game, and it can be the same with sports cards in a way. And I actually a little bit forgot about what I was going to make the point there, but it was just basically like the learning aspect of cards. I think is so important, and I think that there's so many different ways you can learn about cards. There's so many podcasts nowadays, there's so many different YouTube videos. For you, like, what's something that sports cards has taught you?
Oh, wow. Well, going back to when I was a kid, it was kind of my first foray into business. So it was basically like, understanding. I mean, the Beckett Price Guide was my first look at like, okay, this is this widget, this card that is worth
Mm,
5 cents, and now it's worth 10 cents, or now it went from 10 cents to 5 cents. It was like prehistoric times when the Beckett magazine was coming out compared to today, where it was like
right.
a
Yeah.
card
Yeah.
moves from 1,000 to 2,000. It was like, yes, this one went from 25 to 50 cents, and there's a little arrow next to it. I mean, it was a very different game, totally different from cards and collectibles, whether it's like the nostalgia stuff. I think it fills a void for some people. I think that it also is the thing that we can control in our life. So you have all these kind of moving parts that you can't control, family things, health things, we could all be gone tomorrow, but we can control kind of our collection. We can control how we do that. So there's probably a lot of self-care, mental health, benefits, and negative things, I suppose. That we were talking about the addiction part, but I think there's way more benefits than there are negatives for sure. So yeah, that's a tough one to completely answer, but yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of lessons.
Right. Oh, and I also remembered the point that I was going to make about Call of Duty. It's a game, but also social media, if you view it in a certain way, can be like a game as well. So I
Hmm.
sometimes find myself wanting to create content because I'm interested in sort of, it's almost like playing a game where it's like you try, it's strategy, it's analyzing, it's figuring out what's going to work, what's not going to work. But yeah, so that was the point that I was trying to make when I brought up Call of Duty earlier that I forgot about. So to to bring it back to cards a little bit specifically, like, so do you have any cards in your collection that mean a lot to you, or maybe not even cards, like maybe it's a memorabilia piece, or do you have something like that means a lot to you?
I have quite a few. I would say a lot of my Saints stuff. Like I'm a Drew Brees PC guy. So like here, I'll just grab a card off of my desk. But this is one of them, just like a flawless auto. It's numbered 1/5.
Oh, nice.
I've got a signed. Hold on, let me see if I can just grab it. I'll just pick it up. I need to actually get a case for this, but I've got a signed full size speed helmet.
Nice.
It's Breeze and Alvin Kamara.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully Alvin Kamara is still on our team after
right. Yeah.
But so yeah, there's a few pieces. I've got the Luka Doncic signed jersey back here. I've got a Barry Sanders signed jersey as well that says the Lion King. So it's like Barry Sanders, the Lion King. I've seen him sign cards like that too. So yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time about like favorite card or favorite this or that. And I just feel like I can't narrow it down really. I've got so many favorite things. That's probably part of my problem.
Right. Yeah. Same. Yeah. And so we've kind of touched on a little bit throughout here. So there's been so many things that have sort of changed throughout the industries. And I'm not really asking for necessarily a prediction for the next 5 years, but like, what's something that you're looking forward to in the next, 3 to 4, maybe 5 years, next decade? I guess you kind of take it however you want, but like, what's something that you're looking forward to kind of coming up within cards over the next couple of years?
I think it's the elephant in the room. Everybody talks about it, but it's really how Fanatics is going to execute their plan. Because there's no doubt, and I talk about it all the time, but Michael Rubin is the obvious visionary. He just, he was in Burbank talking to Devin Booker on the phone while a Devin Booker collector was in front of him. I mean, he's kind of the Pied Piper. He has all the influence. It's a really rare combination that you have the guy that owns the company that's going to basically control cards also happens to be basically a celebrity himself. He's tied in with all the athletes and the musicians and all. I mean, it's such a, I guess maybe, I don't know if it's a lucky combination, but think about any company that could have come in and done that. I mean, if it was any other company outside of like a Fanatics, it also could be a guy that works at Fanatics that doesn't even really give a damn about any of the stuff. It's just like a great, maybe it's the CEO of like any CEO. I mean, if the CEO of, eBay or if the CEO of some of these other huge companies stepped out, like, would we even know who they are if we saw them at a card show? Probably not. And would they be able to call Devin Booker on the phone? Probably not.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm really curious, I think, and it's going to sound like I'm being overly positive or optimistic. I'm really curious to see if his company can deliver on his vision, because it's obvious that he knows what he's doing, but it's a whole other thing to make sure you have the right people in place that can deliver that vision, so, and there's so many moving parts with what they're trying to do. So I'm excited to see how they manage that.
Yeah, I agree about, Michael Rubin. I think I understand maybe some of the negativity towards sort of the conglomerate that is Fanatics, but at the same time, I guess I also kind of look at it and say, like, why can't we look at it positively? I feel like sometimes, just in general, and maybe this is just social media overall, can be so negative about, whether it's cards or whether it's anything. And maybe sometimes I'm just looking in the wrong place. And it's like one day you click on one video and then the next thing you know, you got 10 videos about that same thing and it's all negative. But either way, I mean, I think Michael Rubin being out at these shows, I think is important. And I think we also in sports cards a little bit don't realize like how famous he really is, because it's like he's sort of coming into our space. So it's like I feel like we're expecting a lot from him. And so, I mean, from your perspective, like if, let's say it's, I don't know, 5 years after Fanatics maybe takes over everything. What would you say would be like a success, I guess, if there's something that you can think of, like maybe one or two things that like after they take over, like how would you view the acquisition that Fanatics did as sort of a success in this scenario?
It's really tricky because, we're always up against this, collectibles aren't worth anything if you print too much, but then it's
Mm.
like, well, but if we don't have enough product, then the young people can't get, don't have anything.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
pick your poison on that. I mean, even though Panini does get a lot of, crap thrown at them for they're not doing this or redemptions or this or that or whatever, I think their products look like I love silver prisms. Like, I mean, I
Mm.
really hope that Fanatics can make some sort of a deal with them to keep those brands going, even if it's just some sort of like a licensing thing or whatever. Like they keep doing, they don't buy Panini, but they at least get the licensing or some sort of a deal worked out where they can sell Prism. I think that if they can just get releases out on time, kind of get back to where we used to be. Now, literally, you've got hockey product that's coming out from Upper Deck that's like from 2 years ago or something. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
2021 hockey. Like what? I mean, if they could figure out, again, that's part of the executing the plan. I think if you can just get back to where we can get products on schedule, I think they did a good job by eliminating a lot of products. I believe it was Topps that announced that at their conference. Hey, we're going to cut like these 20 we don't need 40 different types of basketball product or whatever,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So I think that there's some, I think that, and a lot of people that have talked about this, but Fanatics is a sports memorabilia company as well. So, the idea that you have, the event worn stuff, like nobody wants to see that. If you're spending $5,000 for a flawless box, it better have like shoelaces from a game, from a specific game on the card. Like
Right.
have something cool in there, have some really unique stuff. As opposed to just like napkin patch from a jersey from Walmart or whatever, I mean,
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah.
it's just gotten too expensive. I mean, it's just, if it was $100 for a hobby box and you could pull these things and have a napkin patch from Walmart, but when it's $5,000 for a box, it cannot be event worn stuff. It's got to be legit, like insane cards that come out of
Right.
there. And I hope that they
Yeah.
just kind of elevate what we think of when we think of insane cards. I hope that, but really, I don't think you can do anything differently as far as like PMGs or whatever. Like, I think they've done like about as much as you can do with card stock. I'm talking more about just like cool memorabilia stuff. That's really like on card auto with like wicked memorabilia stuff attached to it. You know,
Yeah,
that's
definitely. I mean, I think, elevating those higher end brands, and I guess maybe not necessarily elevating some of the lower end brands, but just bring the value. I feel like match the value of what it costs. Like I feel like, I put out a video that I've gotten some feedback on recently about like talking about how like Prism, for example, like they increased the print run, but they also increased the price, and that the increased print run also brought down the quality of the product. And a couple people have reached out and said that they don't know exactly how to fix something like that. And so, I mean, I guess I've got two more questions for you. So one would be like, let's just say you're Michael Rubin. What's something that you would do or you would bring to the hobby that would kind of, how would you bring the sports card dad influence into the hobby? Like what's something, an idea that you would do maybe?
So I think he should go all in on exactly what he did at Burbank with Devin Booker and that girl,
Mm.
because that stuff goes viral. Everybody's talking about that.
It
That's
was on
insane.
ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a simple thing. Look, that took 30 seconds of maybe like 60 seconds of his time. It
Right.
got put on camera. But if you create those types of experiences and associate that with a redemption card, let's say, because you have to remember too, like the league signed up, but also the player association. So they care about it too. I mean, all these athletes, they're getting a cut. They're going to like Fanatics. That's part of the reason why people are like, how is Fanatics going to make any money? Because they paid like so much and then they have to cut in all the players and everything. So with that said, yeah, when Michael Rubin calls Devin Booker, like he's going to answer the phone because that's
Mm.
Michael Rubin at Fanatics and they've got that business deal. Plus they like each other and all that.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think if he can turn these like, these cards also into experiences. That was also the big thing with NFTs. Like, what's the utility? What's the utility?
Right.
Well, you could do the same thing with a card. It would be, what's the utility? So, yeah, maybe there's some amazing Logo Man cards that are in this set, but there's also these experience cards or whatever the hell you want to call that, to where you can, if you've got the card, then you're able to, it's kind of similar to where it's like, you can win a trip to the Super Bowl. That's
Mm.
like they've been doing that forever, like win 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. Well, think about that on just such a more broad scale. You can go to a Magic game, an Orlando Magic game, 2 tickets or whatever, but you could also have player experiences and just figure out how to orchestrate that with the leagues, to where it gets fans closer to the athletes so that it's not some like, you've got to be in the know. You've got to have, somebody on the inside. Because typically when I think of somebody that can go and get like Luka Doncic, meet him and get his autograph, I think of like Jeff Bezos's kid, that's
Right.
sitting
Yeah.
on
Yeah. Right. Right.
courtside tickets. It's like, hey, Luca. And I'm like, cool. Like, I'll never do that. So wouldn't it be nice if there was a card and a product where it's like that once in a lifetime experience is in that box? I think that's like, okay, well, then I understand why it's $5,000 for a box. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I love that idea. I think the individual experiences is how we're going to create lifelong fans of cards and lifelong fans of these athletes. Like, because as a kid, I don't remember the random game where, the team, maybe they won 10-4, or we left in the 7th inning or something along those lines. I remember the games where you had an interaction with one of those players, or you caught a foul ball or something along those lines. So I mean, I think that's a phenomenal idea, and I mean, something that I've definitely been advocating for as well. I think if Topps or Fanatics, we are readily available with ideas. So I think if they want to like reach out to us, those ideas will be free, but the next couple ones I think we will have to start charging.
Yeah, I've been doing Fanatics videos too, not necessarily just to get their attention, but it is such that it's the elephant in the room. It's like, I mean, they're really going to rule. So,
Right.
I feel like if nobody is talking about different ideas, like we have YouTube channels, throw out your ideas on your IG account or on your YouTube,
Right.
They might never see it, or they might watch every single one of them. I
Right,
mean, it's a
exactly.
big company. I mean, I think they pay attention to stuff more than we probably know.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I do sort of hope is that, like, I hope that the criticism sometimes from collectors doesn't like rub them the wrong way, I guess, because I think that there are so many, there are so many channels and so many people that create positive content, and but there is some criticism that I think is warranted in some scenarios. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of any. I mean, other than I guess maybe Panini's quality control, I guess, is one that has gotten some criticism over the past. But I mean, I guess I hope that they don't necessarily take the criticism super personally, I guess, because it's like, at the end of the day, like, I think sometimes we forget as card collectors and people on the internet that, like, the products that we're opening, it took usually a human kind of producing at each level of that product. So it's like, there's maybe not the QC and maybe not the like cutting and packing of the cards necessarily, but like, the design of the cards, the distribution, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think over the next few years, it'll definitely be interested to see other ways that Fanatics kind of, tries interacting, because I mean, including Burbank sports cards like that, if you go to TikTok, I think that TikTok with Michael Rubin on ESPN's account has like, I think I saw it had like 10 million views or something like that. And it's like, we
Oh, wow.
also now get like, Burbank sports cards, which is like one of the most famous card stores probably in the United States right now. Like, they're also getting put on display there too. So that, I mean, I'm excited for kind of what's to come and everything they got. So I have one more question for you. I know you got your show coming up. It's at 9:00, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So if after this interview, or after you watch my show, go over, make sure you check out the Sports Card Dad on YouTube. He's got a show coming up. My final question for you, it's kind of similar to one that we talked about a little bit earlier, is what would you consider is your dream card?
That's really tough. I don't have, and the reason why I usually answer it this way is because I've been back in the hobby for about 5 years, and I feel like what I've collected has changed over time. So I know for some people, they've got their player collectors, they're collecting Michael Jordan, or they're collecting Derek Jeter, or they've got a very defined way that they're doing things. I mean, for me, really, Drew Brees is my PC. I collect Tom Brady. I have a lot of Tom Brady stuff. I also collect Hall of Fame autos. So I have just a variety across all sports of, patch autos or different autographs. I really enjoy that. I've got a wicked Stranger Things card collection. I mean, but I've got all sorts of different things. So I don't know if I know yet what my dream card is, just because I almost feel like I need to be in the hobby a little bit, back in a little bit more. Not that I'm not aware of cards, but I feel like I'm aware of the majority of the important sets, if you will, but I haven't landed in on something where I'm just like, man, that's my big goal. I'm chasing this. I'm trying to trying to trade up into this particular card, because honestly, like I live mostly in the $100 to $500 range, and I
Mm,
feel like there's so many awesome cards that are in that price point, especially now that prices have come down over the last year or so. So I mean, I just kind of live in there. Yes, I have some that are more expensive than that, but I don't own, like my most expensive card is a $2,000 card. That's my most valuable card that I own, is, and that's not, I'm not saying that that's nothing, but in this hobby, that's like a hobby
right.
box.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a
Right.
couple hobby boxes. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry to not have a
Yeah.
great answer.
No, I mean, that's great. I mean, honestly, I ask all my guests that question because everyone has like a different way to answer it. Some people know they have the card exactly like, I had Mike Summer on and he said it was like the 52 mantle, and I had Danny Black on and there was a Orioles card that he said. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm just interested. I think the one thing that I'm going to try and do more a little bit over, as my content creation journey, I guess, goes, is just kind of maybe get the stories of cards, I think, out a little bit more. Cause I think, there's so many things that happen in the news, to be completely honest. Like, I know my content is a lot of like news focused, but like, I think the stories behind cards are the story behind specific cards is just as important as maybe some of the news. Because like I said, I think those experiences of how you bought the card or the experiences of cards, like that's sort of, everybody has a story. And I think that's kind of the one
Yeah.
thing that I think is really interesting when it comes to, talking to people and interviewing people. Like, everybody has a story.
Yeah, it's true. It's because that's fun content to make, kind of that collector content and the story behind the cards. But if we look at, what is the most popular content, it's probably more of the business side of the
Mm,
hobby is the more popular content. And it's not to say that it's better. It's just that I think that people tune into that for whatever reason. They like to see buying and selling. They like to see
mm,
they like to see the business side or the news side, whether it be,
right.
everyone tunes into the bad news, like everyone
Right.
wants
Yeah.
to hear
Yeah.
about the
Right.
bad news. So it is tricky. It's tough to kind of balance those things out, because I agree with you. I mean, I would love to make more of the collector type content, that's just strictly about card sets. I do enjoy that, and I have done some of that, but it's just tough to, I guess, just because time is limited. It's
Right.
like I'll go to make that, and then there'll be like three other news stories where it's like,
Right.
shoot,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
have to
Right.
come back to that, or so it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, like I said, I appreciate you coming on here and telling kind of your story about all the stuff you got within cards. Let the audience know sort of where they can find you, and if you got anything you want to promote, definitely, let everybody know what you got.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm the Sports Card Dad on YouTube. I'm at Sports Card Dad on IG. I don't know if I have anything necessarily to promote, but I appreciate you having me on. I'll definitely promote this, on the, make sure I shout out your channel on my next. If it's not tomorrow, it'll be the day after.
Sure.
I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, I think I started watching you going back a few years. When did you actually start? 2020
Like
or earlier?
2018, like the end of 2018 is when I got back into cards, and then it was either late 2018 or early 2019 is when I kind of got back into like card or doing card content in general. But like
Oh, okay.
2020, I feel like is definitely 2020. I feel like is when everybody kind of, not like necessarily blew up, but like everybody's content was kind of like doing really well back then.
Yeah, yeah. I remember seeing your stuff early on when I started making it. So I've been watching your stuff for a long time. But yeah, it's good to see kind of you're on Hobby Hotline, and so congrats there. And then I saw you're going to join. What is the name of the news network that's
Yeah,
starting?
Hobby News Daily. I'm doing the
Hobby News Daily.
podcast for them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome. I like watching a ton of different content, so I'll be watching.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yep. So Sports Card Dad on YouTube, all the IG and Twitter. Obviously, check out Twitter. That's where I'll be kind of promoting a lot of the stuff on here. So, like I said, Dustin, thank you so much for coming on.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. I'll see you
Have
later,
a good
man.
one.